This is the IBJ podcast for the week of November 25th, 2019. I'm Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast. That round of applause you just heard was a snippet from a press conference last week hosted by the Indianapolis-based Center for Leadership Development. It announced that it had been awarded an $11.6 million grant from the Lilly Endowment here in Indianapolis. Now, the endowment has supported the center since its beginning in 1977. This is the largest single grant the center has ever received. And after 42 years, it has arrived at a potentially transformational moment. And of course, this is thematically appropriate since the Center for Leadership Development is dedicated to transforming the lives of young people. Specifically, it aims to reach African American and other minority children in central Indiana at key moments in their upbringing and help them learn about themselves and what it takes to succeed, all the way up to college and then beyond. Let's quickly take a trip back to 1977. A group of civic and business leaders who founded the center identified several factors that they believed were limiting African American youth from achieving, or even aspiring to achieve, academic and career success. They didn't know or understand the career opportunities that were available. If they did, they didn't know how to prepare for opportunities. And they lacked access to professionals who could provide guidance or mentoring or encouragement. Today, the center offers 15 regular programs for children between 4th grade and their senior year of high school. Some focus on academic skills, others on character development and personal responsibility. Some of the most popular focus on succeeding in high school and preparing for college. The center also provides immersive experiences with minority entrepreneurs and medical professionals. This year, the center expects to serve more than 4,000 participants, which includes some of the students' parents. So, with this gift from Lilly Endowment, where does CLD go from here? I spoke with President Dennis Bland to get a sense of how it plans to grow in terms of participants, programs, and physically with satellite locations in troubled neighborhoods. After all, its specialty is knowing how to prepare for the future. Here's our conversation. Dennis, thank you so much for making time for us this week.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
So before we get into the details of the grant, I did want to ask you a somewhat personal question. I know back in the early 1980s, you participated in the center's programming. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What was your experience?
Sure. I participated in the Center for Leadership Development when I was a senior in high school, the fall of my senior year. And as I like to say, being introduced to the Center for Leadership Development was being introduced to a different aspect of life and living. I'd been familiar with school. What I had not been familiar with was how life operated outside of school as it pertains to future planning in education, as it pertains to future planning in career, and kind of how the system of preparation and life after high school works. That experience, that immersion came through the Center for Leadership Development. So it was, as I like to say, a hallmark of leadership is being introduced to noble experiences or noble introductions. So outside of the Center for Leadership Development, I would not have had those introductions. This is how business works. This is how you interview for a job. This is what they are considering when they interview. These are the considerations that you weigh when you're applying for college. It was much more immersive in preparing people for life after high school. Kind of, this is the real world, and then this is how you engage in it, and this is how you engage in it to be prepared to excel at the highest levels.
And then how did that impact your life at the time?
I think it helped me in formulating better thoughts about my future, about career. It helped me in actually understanding the importance of networks, even within the Center for Leadership Development. In fact, as I went through college and after college, the Center for Leadership Development was there as one of those strong networks that was supporting me through the college experience. And then the Center for Leadership Development was there for me as I graduated from college and as I began to go into the professional environment.
How is CLD different today than it was in the early 1980s?
Well, I'm happy to say that it is the exact same with respect to the mission. The organization was founded with a mission of helping African American youth become professional business and community leaders. What has changed over that time is, number one, the number of students that we are serving. Number two, the number of programmatic experiences that we're offering to young people to help elevate them to realize their potential. And then number three, the diversity of experiences that we're offering young people to enhance the experience that they're getting here at the Center for Leadership Development.
So on Tuesday, you announced that the Lilly Endowment had awarded an $11.6 million grant. And we'll get into the details in a minute, but what in general do you see is the effect of that grant? What is it going to allow you to do that you're not doing now?
The Center for Leadership Development will be able to introduce more students to the expectation of life and success. We will be able to introduce young people. For example, I like to say I want to introduce more students to the honor roll. John, I'd like to introduce you to honor roll. Honor roll, meet John. Young person, this is character formation, meet young person. Can we take someone who had no interest in school or very little interest in school, and through this grant, create more of those noble introductions?
How much do you think you can increase participation?
Within 5 years, we would like to go from serving 4,000 students and parents a year to 6,500 students and parents a year. And we want to do that by, number one, actually establishing satellite locations in maybe 4 or 5 of our highest crime, lowest income areas. Number two, outside of the satellites in these different neighborhoods, we want to actually take CLD programming into the schools, so that now during the school day, there's an opportunity for an hour, hour and a half, 30 minutes, based upon the arrangement with the schools, where we have the opportunity to go in and interface with students there in the school environment, and hopefully have an impact in being able to help young people draw a stronger connection and understanding between what we're offering at the Center for Leadership Development and how that translates into relevancy of education, and how it translates into students becoming stronger students because they're beginning to look at the education enterprise through a different prism. And then we actually want to add 15,000 square feet to this existing facility as a part of this Lilly grant, where we've gone out to the satellites, we've engaged with students, met their parents, we've gone to the schools, we're meeting students, we're engaging with them at a certain level. But then our hope is to ultimately get those students with whom we've engaged to come over to an expanded center for more immersive and more continuous help and development and cultivation in areas where they need help, to help them become professional business and community leaders.
So you, prior to this, have not been part of the schools. How did people find out about CLD? How did you recruit students in the first place?
Now, we go to schools, and schools have been, as you could probably imagine, our primary source for participants. We would reach out to the schools, and then the schools would actually refer students, and the students would come to the center, and they would come and involve in Center for Leadership Development programs after school, in the evenings, and on Saturdays. The difference would be now we go into the schools during the school day and actually engage with the students there inside the school building.
So what areas of town do you think you'd be looking at?
We're in 46208. That's one of those hot spots. 46218 would be a zip code for consideration. 46222 would be an area for consideration. 46236. The 42nd and Post Road area has gotten a lot of attention. That would be one of those areas. 46205. Those are some of the zip codes that we would be considering.
So you're looking at adding 15,000 square feet to this building here as well, at 25th and Martin Luther King.
Yes, sir.
And what would that area be used for, essentially?
Expanding the capacity for us to deliver more programming. For example, we're doing a lot of tutoring in the space where you are right now. Sometimes there is conflict between the tutoring and the need for concentration, along with some of the activity that's going on in this one space. Some of this expanded space would be actually having created a separate tutoring lab. So they're a separate space. And then there would be spaces for more classrooms, so that we can have more classroom activity going on simultaneously. And then having larger classroom spaces. Some of our classrooms are not large enough to accommodate the students. And then I didn't mention, but it really is important, something else we will be able to do as a result of the grant from Lilly Endowment is actually begin to establish an endowment, so that in the future, certain income from the endowment would actually be used to support our ongoing operations.
Do you not currently have an endowment?
We do, not formally, but we have reserves, and so this is an opportunity to really ratchet that up.
Do you have a sense of how much of that money is going to be a part of the endowment?
$2 million of that 11.6 is earmarked.
Okay, let's take a moment for a quick break to learn about our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
The IBJ Podcast is brought to you by Krieg DeVault, a trusted and dynamic law firm representing a wide variety of local, regional, and national clients. Committed to each other and to every client, Krieg DeVault prides itself on integrity, professionalism, respect, and excellence. Financial institutions, global manufacturers, national healthcare providers, and successful organizations of all sizes and market focus rely on Krieg DeVault to create innovative and successful business solutions. Connect today at www.kriegdevault.com.
All right, we're back with the IBJ Podcast. I'm with Dennis Bland, president of the Center for Leadership Development, and we're talking about how the organization plans to grow with the help of an $11.6 million grant from the Lilly Endowment. One of the things that I thought I understood about the grant is that it would allow you also to meet your graduates, the ones who are in college, and help support them while they are in college. Is that right?
That's right. To help us achieve our goals with respect to college and post-secondary education success, we have 3 specific goals. We want every student who has the Center for Leadership Development label to enroll in school and be there on day 1. Goal number 2 is that you're actually moving successfully through the system. You're persisting from first semester to second semester, from first year to second year, second to third. And then goal number 3 is that you're actually getting your degree or credential that you set out to pursue. 4-year program, 2-year program, certification program, vocational program, whatever it is, we need you to finish what you start. So absolutely, a part of this grant would allow us to actually start, for example, a mentoring program where successful CLD alumni would be able to then connect and partner with students who are in college who could use that one-on-one mentoring. The grant would also allow us to hire a college success coordinator. College success coordinators would be able to connect with students at the different universities where you have appreciable numbers of CLD alumni to provide them, alumni, the additional support that they need as they're matriculating through the college experience.
I mean, that goal is really fascinating to me because, I think that there's sort of a general belief that once you make it to college, then you're fine. But that to actually make it through your post-secondary experience, does require a lot of support.
It does. So we have a challenge in the African American experience where there are so many students who are not persistent, who are not earning their degrees. And so this is why we've started a college prep institute to make sure we put a singular focus on addressing these issues that tend to inhibit college readiness and hence prevent college success.
What sort of challenges do CLD graduates have once they get to college?
We've identified a few. Number 1, it's a financial issue for a number of students. Number 2, unfortunately, the CLD graduates, because of their work, their percentages are exceeding the state averages of students compared to students who have not had the Center for Leadership Development experience. But a second general challenge is that you have a number of students who've just never been prepared and ready for the college standard, the college expectation of what will be required to study. This is how I studied in high school. It seemed to work well for me. If I do this in college, I'll be okay. And a number of them find out, well, no, that's not the way it works. Some people would say, well, of course it doesn't work that way. You should expect to do more. Well, sometimes people are not necessarily always prepared to do that. They don't know that. And then for another challenge is even if people know it, they have not readied themselves to make that commitment to actually do what is required. I always like to say, in talking to young people, one of the things you have to be ready to expect in going to the college experience to be able to be successful is that you have to develop a habit of doing assignments and carrying out responsibilities that you would not have assigned yourself to do. And if you're not in the habit of complying, if you're not in the habit of obeying, if you're not in the habit of respecting those who are in an authoritative position to give these types of assignments, you are going to struggle. And are you in the habit of saying whatever the standard is, whatever the requirements are, that's what I have to do in order to hit my goal? Or are you of the mindset that says, and I think a lot of young people are of this mindset, I really have in my mind what I'm prepared to do. What I'm oftentimes not prepared to do is to deliver on something that someone else has asked me to do when that expectation just happens to be higher or more or bigger or greater than what I was expecting and anticipating.
One thing you mentioned when you talked about participants in the program, you also mentioned parents.
Yes, we have essentially a two-generation approach in the Center for Leadership Development program, and we understand, you know this intuitively, and the data and the research backs it up. Those students who have the actively engaged, prepared, ready parents are those students who seem to do well in school, whatever the level. So we wanted to be intentional about making sure that we have parents heavily engaged in the lives of their sons and daughters. We have about 15 programs offered at the Center for Leadership Development. Well, 3 of those programs actually require parents to go through the programs with their sons and daughters. One of the programs, called Parents Chat, is a program exclusively for parents. And then we have the College Prep Institute, and we have guidance counseling services where our paradigm is not just to bring the students in for counseling. The paradigm is to bring the family in for counseling. Since the parents are such great influencers, what happens if we can really intentionally equip the parents and what they need to know and understand it, especially when a number of parents have not themselves gone to college. Some parents have not finished high school. So how much more impactful could it be if you bring the parents up to where they need to be and then equip the parents so that now parents feel like I can really be a great advocate for my son and daughter.
Now, the Lilly Endowment has supported the CLD, I think, from the beginning. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
But this time you got a very large grant. How did that come about?
I think it happened because years of dedication of individuals who preceded me, who were committed to honoring and stewarding Lilly Endowment's initial investment in the Center for Leadership Development 42 years ago. There would not have been a Center for Leadership Development for Dennis Bland to participate in had Lilly Endowment not funded the organization, funded the idea. So there was the initial work and the steadfastness and the stewardship of the dollars that then brought the organization forward, which then put us in a position maybe 3 years ago where we began the conversation with Lilly Endowment to say, well, this is what we've been able to do in the past. We'd really like to do more, and this is what we would like to do specifically. We simply don't have the resources to do it. But what we do believe is that we are not today trying to learn or figure out what empowers young people to succeed and what helps them overcome challenges. We've had those hard lessons. Now we know what works. We're just trying to get the resources to implement what works, and we're trying to get the resources to scale what we know works.
When you had the conversation, or started to have the conversation with Lilly Endowment a few years ago, did you feel like the organization had plateaued to a point? You felt like in order to get to that next level, you did need that extra funding?
We were stymied by a lack of resources to be able to do what we knew we were capable of doing. I think our inability to address some of these issues actually prove our point, and that is we can't address some of these issues. It's not because we don't recognize them to be problems, and it's not because we don't feel like we can affect these challenges positively. It's because we don't have the resources to be able to do the things that we think we're capable of doing to be able to impact young people and meet them where they are.
So what are the next steps that you plan to take in the coming months or the coming year to start putting the gears into motion?
We are doing a lot of that now. It's a lot of background work, a lot of planning, a lot of strategizing, a lot of whiteboarding exercises. It will also be then going forward really more deeply mapping out a plan. Of course, we've done that at a high level and even making the request for the grant, but it's really teasing it out in more detail and then developing a plan of execution and then getting the people in place that can actually help us in implementing the plan and implement a strategy to make these ideas, bring them into fruition. We're in conversations with individuals who've said, oh man, I've heard about this and I'd like for you to consider this neighborhood or this particular area to have one of these satellites. So over the next few months, we will be having conversations with some of these groups. We'll be hiring some individuals whose job will be in helping to implement some of these satellite programs. We'll be establishing framework and rubric and standards around which we would expect that we would need to operate from to be able to make sure we have a solid plan going forward, and based upon that standard, we go out and then say which other community partners would actually work well with us in being able to implement these plans.
When would you expect to have the satellite locations open?
I could imagine it would be a methodical, systematic process. We wouldn't try to do all this in 1 year. It would probably be a year establishing a satellite, maybe 2, just depending on how the process works. And then maybe the second year, there are 2 additional satellites that come online. And then the third year, maybe 2 additional satellites. And unfortunately, it's satellite, it's not new programming.
How many employees do you currently have, and then how many would you expect to bring on?
We currently have 42 full and part-time, and we'll be looking to add about 11 full-time workers over the next 5 years.
A lot of organizations, when they go through this kind of thing, they also start a capital campaign. Is that something that's on the radar?
Well, that's something that we will definitely be thinking about.
When is a good time to check back with you on how things are going?
6 months, 8 months, a year. I think those are some good markers. But certainly a year from now would be interesting for us to see what has happened, what has transpired. We don't have sports. We don't have football and basketball. We don't play video games at the Center for Leadership Development. So what we offer amounts to broccoli and spinach. And so young people aren't jumping up and down. I, however, am jumping up and down because I understand the health benefit of what we're serving. I understand that people who are really strong in character and education, leadership, service, and career end up having the lifestyles and the lives of purpose and meaning and consequence that so many people say they want.
All right. Well, I'll check back with you in a year, and I'll expect to see some more broccoli.
Oh, well, absolutely. And spinach, too.
I'll bring the kale and some salt. Dennis, thank you so much for making time for us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
My thanks again to Dennis Bland. And if that name rings any bells for the old-timers out there, I can't resist mentioning that Dennis was the co-captain of the Broad Ripple High School basketball team that in 1983 was a sectional and regional champion in the Indiana High School basketball tournament. That's back in the old single-class days. And before you get on with the rest of your week, I did want to draw attention to a few stories in this week's IBJ. Mickey Shuey has the latest in the dispute between the city of Indianapolis and developer Ambrose Property Group, which last week filed a lawsuit to prevent the city from seizing the old GM stamping plant site on the southwestern outskirts of downtown. This fight could take years to play out in court, delaying any development on the site. Also this week's issue, Lindsay Erdotti reports on the progress towards building a permanent music venue in White River State Park, not too far away from that GM site. And Sam Quinn explores the ramifications of the Democrats' near sweep in the Indianapolis city elections. In addition to the mayor's office, they now have a supermajority on the city-county council. You can find all of these stories in the issue of IBJ that you have delivered to your home or office, or online at ibj.com. And remember, for full and unfettered access to all of IBJ's award-winning business content, just click the subscribe button. Thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast, which is edited by Leslie Weidenbender. I'm Mason King, and we'll be back again next week.